Whether you like them or not, for a lot of you, the answer is not. Well, here they come. It's roundabout time we talk about roundabouts. People get pretty passionate about these things. Not excluded from the crowd are engineers. But a pair of incumbents, Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur and Governor Mike DeWine, haven't committed to sharing the stage with their opponents.
Yeah, hey, Tito, Tony, that speech set to begin at 5 o'clock. It's his first State of the City address since winning re-election by a historic margin.
We're on Hill Avenue, 475 runs right above it. This right now is the westernmost point of Marcy Kaptur's district. But if she wins re-election for the first time, she would serve voters from here all the way to the Indiana border. The last time Toledo's congressional district shared a border with Indiana was 1853.
The question really at the center of this story was J.R. Majewski serving in combat in Afghanistan post 9/11? To which he says yes. The Associated Press report calls that into question because records obtained by the AP can't verify the fact that he was on the ground in Afghanistan. In fact, he was based in Qatar.
GDP is one of them, and we have seen it decline in the last 2 quarters. That certainly is happening right now, but there's a lot more to it than just that. We're looking at declining incomes, which we haven't seen, a decline in consumer spending, which we are starting to see. We have not seen a decline in manufacturing, also not seeing rising unemployment, still near 50-year lows.
We're inside one of the trucks where they're going to haul all of these toys away. This is the bike truck. We have more than a dozen of them in here right now. Somebody just dropped off a brand new one moments ago. And Santa, I have an update on the amount of toys we've collected. 9,100 so far here in Toledo. We are also collecting toys at the Salvation Army in Findlay, where we have collected 100 toys so far on this Friday. Swing by the Wood County Sheriff's Office in Bowling Green, where we've collected 500 toys. We'll be out here until 6:30. Josh Croup, 13 ABC, Action News.
Inflation, 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 a source of aggravation, higher prices at the store and gas station, the foundation for one party's fixation on making political gains across the nation. Translation, it's likely bad news for the president's party at the ballot box, even if the whole problem isn't his fault. But he says
Republican wins, inflation is going to get worse.
Yeah, we're going to talk about what this really means for Ohio and Michigan moving forward. And when we start with Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer just releasing a video on social media saying she is going to fight like hell to protect abortion rights. There is a pre-Roe versus Wade law on the books right now in Michigan that does ban abortions, no exceptions for rape or incest. But there was a judge in May who ruled that the state government cannot enforce this law because there's a lawsuit that's playing out right now in the courts. Governor Whitmer is fighting again to protect abortion rights in Michigan. Ohio, you're going to see move a little more quickly, and we already have seen movement in the Ohio courts today. Attorney General Dave Yost filing a motion moments ago to try and lift an injunction against Ohio's heartbeat law. That was passed a few years ago. It bans abortions after a fetal heartbeat can be detected, and that can be as early as 6 weeks before many women know that they are pregnant. So Yost going to court immediately for that. Ohio lawmakers could reconvene this summer or in November to outright ban abortion. Yeah, Lee Diane, this is the 20th time Kaptur is running for re-election in Congress, and it could be her closest race yet.
Whatever happens, it's likely to be a close election.
Close general elections aren't something Marcy Kaptur has experienced many times in her career. In the last 18 general election races, she's only fallen short of 60% of the vote once. Vying for her 21st term in Congress, the longest-serving woman in U.S. House history is coming out swinging.
He's not just radical, he's dangerous.
Many of her TV ads, airing months before the election, have shown pictures of her opponent J.R. Majewski at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Majewski has said he didn't enter the Capitol that day and isn't charged with any crimes, but has said he feels the election was stolen. His campaign accuses Kaptur of pushing a false narrative to deceive voters. University of Toledo political scientist Jeff Broxmeyer says Democrats appear to want to make these images a central part of the campaign, especially with the ongoing January 6th hearings.
Representative Kaptur is trying to kind of lay some groundwork to make the argument for re-election in a climate that's frankly pretty unfavorable to Democrats right now.
Also unfavorable, Kaptur's new district that was safe for Democrats and now leans toward Republicans. We're on Hill Avenue, 475 runs right above it. This right now is the westernmost point of Marcy Kaptur's district. But if she wins re-election for the first time, she would serve voters from here all the way to the Indiana border. The last time Toledo's congressional district shared a border with Indiana was 1853. This week, the Ohio Supreme Court ruled this map is unconstitutional. A new one needs drawn for 2024. To make it there, Kaptur has to win over voters she's never represented in areas that are increasingly voting against her party.
She's campaigning as an incumbent who's done this and knows how to try and cultivate a constituency, but it is an uphill road.
Kaptur told me when Ohio was redrawing districts that she would run regardless of the new boundaries, adding she'll always put her record up against anybody's. Reporting live, Josh Croup, 13 ABC Action News.
J.R. Majewski is defending his military service that's been called into question this week. The Republican hoping to unseat Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur says his deployment locations are classified. 13 ABC's Josh Croup is live now with how Majewski is explaining his record. Josh.
Diane, Majewski called a brief news conference today to address an Associated Press story published Wednesday. The headline is that Majewski misrepresented his military service. At the heart of the story is Majewski's time in Afghanistan.
The story has been published and the damage has been damning.
Republican J.R. Majewski, the party's nominee in Ohio's 9th Congressional District, defended his military record Friday. He sold himself as a combat veteran who deployed to Afghanistan after 9/11. But military documents obtained by the Associated Press say he never deployed to the country. Instead, the AP reports he was based in Qatar, where he helped load planes and landed at other bases to transfer military passengers, medics, and supplies.
I flew into combat zones often, specifically in Afghanistan, and I served my country proudly.
He didn't offer evidence of that service in Afghanistan at his news conference.
The orders and the military records that I've been able to obtain from my personal files shows that all of my deployments are listed as classified.
He didn't say when or where he was at in Afghanistan.
We flew in and out of the area of responsibility multiple times. It's almost impossible for me to tell you where I was on what day.
Majewski read a 4-minute statement before taking questions for about 2 minutes. Then he said he had another appointment to attend. On his way out, he told reporters his lawyer would, quote, share everything in due time. After the story was published, the National Republican Congressional Committee reportedly canceled nearly $1 million in TV ads it planned to run for Majewski in the district leading up to the election. He declined to comment on that report. His opponent, Representative Marcy Kaptur, called on Majewski to explain more about his record.
It's his responsibility to answer those questions and to explain his own history. I really don't know very much about the man.
Now, an Air Force spokesperson told the New York Times this week there's no way to verify whether Majewski did serve in Afghanistan. Records obtained by the AP show that he received no commendations or medals that people who did have combat experience there would have received. The Air Force says that list might be incomplete. Majewski says he just never applied for those medals and never asked for his records to be updated. Reporting live, Josh Croup, 13 ABC Action News. And during his campaign and on the night he was elected, Mayor Wade Kapsakavich talked a lot about how he wanted to build on progress that he had seen in Toledo since he took office, build on momentum, and look toward the future. How about at last year's State of the City address? Well, there was a lot of reflection at that point. It happened in February, and we were coming up on 1 year of being in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. We were looking back on the racial justice protests that we saw that prior summer. But even at last year's speech, with all of that in the rear view, the mayor was still focusing on the positives. Expect a similar tone tonight, specifically when it comes to that COVID relief money that Tina mentioned. Toledo is getting $180 million in American Rescue Plan funds. The mayor told us live on our air, whenever he was celebrating his re-election victory, that he was looking forward to implementing a plan to spend that money because he said, as far as having opportunities to make a positive impact on Toledo's future, we will never have a bigger opportunity than that one, guys.
All right, thanks, Josh. Crime really on the minds of a lot of people here in the city of Toledo, especially with the uptick in violence that we've seen in the recent weeks. So what can we expect the mayor to say about the issues that are going on?
Yeah, and that's the number one thing that a lot of people want to hear from the mayor. And he has not shied away from talking about that recently, telling us just as recently as 2 weeks ago that
yeah, there's a problem in the city, but it's with retaliatory crime, not with random crime, not with random violence. Violence and overall crime numbers are down this year compared to last year, and don't be surprised if we hear him mention that, but certainly expect him to talk about that because, as he told us a couple of weeks ago, you're going to have to talk about what's happening if you want to solve a problem.
You only have to watch political ads for a couple of more weeks, and as candidates make their closing arguments, there's one line that you'll likely keep hearing. Here's Josh Croup with Why It Matters.
Stop me if you've heard this one before.
100% every time.
They agree 100% of the time.
That is a lot of the time, and it's not inaccurate. It just doesn't tell us the whole story. Let's dive in. It is right to say that Tim Ryan and Marcy Kaptur have voted in line with President Biden's positions 100% of the time during his first 2 years in office. But so have 156 other members of the House. 215 House Democrats have been on his side at least 98% of the time. Let's look at the first 2 years of the Trump presidency. Ryan and Kaptur voted with Trump more than 23% of the time. Nancy Pelosi sided with him 20% of the time. Did Nancy Pelosi agree with a fifth of Trump's agenda? Did Kaptur and Ryan support nearly a quarter of all of his ideas? Of course not. But again, these are just votes. A party's leadership won't put the big things up for a vote unless they know they're going to pass, unless they know they have the votes, and they have to be in sync. But a lot of times, votes are on little things that don't get the headlines, especially in the Senate. A lot of the votes there are on cabinet and judicial nominees. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has voted with President Biden 55% of the time. Ohio's Rob Portman, nearly 62%. Are those guys on board with more than half of the president's agenda? No. But this.
He voted 100% for Biden Pelosi's liberal plans.
It's a cheap, easy point, and it sticks with people, especially when the president's approval rating isn't hot. It's smart to be skeptical of any political ad. It's also smart to do your own research, to form your own opinion before you cast your ballot. And that's why it matters. Josh Croup, 13 ABC, Action News. Now to a story you'll only see on 13 ABC. Dogs don't see the world the same way humans do. But the dog you're about to meet can't see it all. When his owner looked around and suddenly couldn't see him, his story suddenly reached far beyond the borders of Ohio.
What a good boy.
At first glance, these are two happy puppies. What you might not see is neither can see, but that's about where their limitations end. That's Blink on the left with his sister Addie. Blink is older now, about 5 years old, living his new life with his adopted family after he was discovered underneath the porch of an abandoned house. He spends his free time on the agility courses.
So he's a pretty amazing boy.
But last Saturday, his owner Allison Holloway returned to a house without Blink. He ran away. They searched all night Saturday, all day Sunday, with no luck.
My thought was, oh my gosh, he's blind. He's got to be terrified, lying in the woods, afraid to move.
Eventually, she took to Facebook.
We just need people to just walk the woods. We need people to walk around the ponds.
Her post reached an international audience. People traveled from some 50 miles away to West Liberty, Ohio, to search for Blink. But by Wednesday, he was still missing. Tornado warnings were in the area, but still the search continued. Then suddenly, a silhouette of a dog appeared on the horizon. That dog's head poked up in the middle of a field.
When I got closer and I saw the white chest and I talked to him and he did his little head tilt. And that moment, that's when I knew it was him. And that's when I knew everything would be okay.
Blink had wandered about 6 miles away from home, in the same direction Allison went when she left Saturday.
He cocked his head and looked at me and took a step towards me and then took another step and then just ducked under the fence and ran right to me. Blink!
The search was over.
He's here!
The storm was over too. Not long after they reunited, painted across the sky was a double rainbow. No, Blink couldn't see it, nor could he see his best friend. He didn't need to. After all, this kind of love is something that goes beyond first sight.